Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
And podcast series from Attitude. I'm Annie, and I'm extremely pleased to welcome John Mitchell, Ph.D., on the topic of mindfulness. Today, Dr. Mitchell will be leading us in a discussion of how pandemic stress specifically impacts ADHD brains, and how mindfulness is shown to reduce that stress and anxiety, plus some creative ideas for integrating mindfulness into your busy everyday. Dr. Mitchell is an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Duke University Medical Center. He is an integral member of the Duke ADHD program and has published more than 70 peer-reviewed publications and books. Most recently, he co-authored a treatment manual titled Mindfulness for Adult ADHD, a clinician's guide. So before I turn over the microphone to Dr. Mitchell, I just need to note a few housekeeping items. Those of you who are tuned in to the live webinar, you may download the slides right now if you want to by clicking on the event resources section of your webinar screen. And if you're interested in the certificate of attendance option, please just keep a lookout for instructions. They will arrive via email about an hour after we wrap up the live broadcast. And for those of you who are listening in replay or podcast mode, you can visit attitudemag.com and search podcast 338 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the certificate of attendance option. So finally, I just want to wish a quick Happy New Year to everyone who's listening. In the last year, our vibrant and engaged Attitude audience has truly kept our team going strong during tough times. And if you support the work we're doing in the ADHD community, I encourage you just to support Attitude. You can do that by subscribing to Attitude at attitudemag.com/subscribe. or signing up for our newsletters at attitudemag.com/newsletters. So without further ado, thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell, for joining us today and for this great and timely presentation on relieving pandemic stress with mindfulness.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for having me. Glad to see you all here, see you here virtually. This is our agenda, but even before we dive into that, even going back to the title, relieving stress associated with the pandemic, I might swap the word relieve with cope with, or temporarily get some short-term relief, because stress during this time is a normative thing. And so I just kind of wanted to start off the talk with that when times are stressful, it's a normative thing to experience stress. So our agenda for today will be to go over how does the pandemic distress affect ADHD brains? What's the latest research on mindfulness for adults with ADHD? And then also, what are some mindfulness meditation strategies to manage pandemic-related anxiety? And then also, what are creative ways to practice mindfulness as well? And then we'll wrap up with some discussion, and we can go over any questions that arise over the course of this talk. Okay, so let me see if I can move forward here. There we go. So first of all, how does the pandemic distress adversely affect ADHD brains? And we know from research that with ADHD, there's a predisposition to more problematic emotional functioning and more negative maladaptive thinking patterns. So we see in the research literature that adults with ADHD, they're more likely to meet criteria for mood and anxiety disorders. We see that adults with ADHD are more likely to report higher levels of depression and anxiety symptoms. And when we look at things like how adults with ADHD cope with negative emotions, such as how long it takes to recover from feeling upset when you get upset, we know that it typically takes longer for adults with ADHD. And so there's also research indicating that adults with ADHD are higher in emotion dysregulation as well. So although not a core diagnostic feature of the disorder, emotion dysregulation is a pretty common characteristic, and some have argued that it is a core feature. Either way, emotion dysregulation is common in ADHD, and so in terms of what it looks like clinically, here's some examples of some emotion dysregulation symptoms that tend to pop up when we look at it in large groups in the research literature. Let's see. There we go. It wouldn't be a good PowerPoint talk if it didn't take the speaker a couple of moments to find the button to move on to the next slide. So I can check that one off the list. And then, so regarding the second bullet here, so first of all, we have greater levels of emotional distress, higher levels of anxiety and depression, whether we're looking at symptoms or rates of disorders. We see higher rates of emotion dysregulation. And then with the second bullet, we also see maladaptive thinking patterns that can further negatively impact negative mood. So adults with ADHD tend to experience thoughts that are similar to those who are depressed. And so, put it in another way, depressive thinking in a way is ADHD thinking. And what I mean by that is that adults with ADHD who do not have depression still endorse significantly higher rates of depressive thinking compared to adults without ADHD. And this slide is from a study that we did a few years back just to demonstrate that point. And so you can see here on the bottom, on the x-axis, we have 3 different groups that we identify. These are all adults with ADHD who also have depression. And then moving to the right of that, we have adults just with ADHD, but no depression. And then to the right of that, we had a control group. So adults without ADHD or depression. And these bars represent their score, each group's scores on a depressive thinking measure. This was the ATQ, the Automatic Thought Questionnaire, that measures depressive thinking. So negative beliefs about yourself and the future and the world around you. And what we found was that the group that was depressed, the ADHD plus depression group, they scored highest, and they should have, because this is a measure of depressive thinking. But the interesting thing that we found was that even when you factored out the depression and you just looked at the adults with ADHD without depression, they're still endorsing significantly more depression than people without ADHD. So in a lot of ways, depressive thinking is ADHD thinking. So these cognitions, or in other words, self-talk or thoughts that people experience, these cognitions and emotions are related to each other. So as humans, we all feel emotions, we all have thoughts, and we all behave. And all of these things that are indicated here in these boxes, they can impact each other. So you can see in this figure that thoughts can impact emotions, emotions can impact thoughts, thoughts can affect behaviors, behaviors can affect thoughts, and emotions and behaviors can affect each other as well. So how might this typically play out for ADHD? So this is just a generic example, but for example, and this example and everything that we're talking about in here is focused primarily on adults. For ADHD, this might play out in the following way. So imagine you're starting your day at work, which now might be your day at home doing work, and you have a lot of things to do. And you have that one thing you really need to work on that you've been putting off. The clock's really ticking. However, instead of working on that actual task, that top priority, you engage in a less important task. And so in this example, you get on your Facebook. So you're off task and you realize that. And so after you engage in that behavior, you might notice a thought like, I can't stick to a plan. I can't do anything right. And then when you have that thought, a result of that emotionally might be you might feel frustrated, and then those emotions can then further impact behavior. So you might be more avoidant because when you're telling yourself you can't do something and you're feeling a strong negative emotion, then that's not an encouraging, motivating thing to behave in a different way. And in fact, it makes it harder. And so this kind of becomes life, where you have this cycle of emotions, thoughts, and behaviors feeding off of each other, and they all impact each other. So there's research to support this model. For example, one of my colleagues up at the University of Richmond, Laura Now, she did a really nice study showing how ADHD behaviors are associated with depressive symptoms. So then in these boxes here, we would say for behaviors, we would put in ADHD symptoms. For emotions, we would put depression. And then they also found that this was also accounted for by the relationship that they had with dysfunctional thinking. So more negativistic thinking, self-critical thoughts. So this is the predisposition that adults with ADHD have to experience more negative emotions and more dysfunctional self-talk. Now, let's add something like a chronic stressor like a pandemic. And what do you think may happen for people with ADHD when we look at their thoughts and emotions when things are particularly stressful? The answer is that if there's a predisposition to negative thinking and negative thoughts and maladaptive thinking, then we would expect these things to worsen. And then certainly with a chronic stressor like COVID-19, whether or not you've been personally impacted by it in terms of having it or knowing someone who has, or just living under the change in lifestyle that the pandemic has brought. We all have a chronic stressor right now. And so if there's a predisposition to do one thing one way and you add in that stressor, we expect that to get stronger. So we're only reaching a year that we've even known about COVID, so there's not too much research with it. But from what we do know, this is one study that came out towards the summer of last year now, that children and adolescents with ADHD had worsening emotional symptoms and more conduct problems than pre-COVID-19 time period. I'm not aware of any studies that have looked at this in adults with ADHD as of yet. There's new stuff coming out all the time. It's really happening in real time, but this is consistent with what we would expect, that with that predisposition to negative emotions and maladaptive thinking, we expect things to get worse. And that's certainly what we see from the research. Okay, so if pandemic stress negatively impacts ADHD brains, what can be done about it? And mindfulness-based interventions for adults with ADHD provides some direction. So first of all, there's a large treatment literature showing that mindfulness is effective, especially to cope with depressed mood, anxiety, and stress. Second of all, is depicted here in this table. In terms of why mindfulness-based interventions are thought to work, there's a number of different pathways and that's proposed to improve clinical outcomes. So it's reasons it's supposed to improve, in the case of ADHD symptoms or negative mood symptoms. And then among the ways that mindfulness is thought to work, I have the box here in two broad areas that it's thought to help by improving attention regulation. And secondly, that's the first box. And then the second is emotion regulation. Actually, it looks like my box was moved a little bit, but we want number 1 and number 3.1 and 3.2 here. And so mindfulness is thought to and has evidence to improve attention regulation and emotion regulation. And it just so happens that ADHD is a disorder characterized by poor attention regulation. And as we talked about in the previous slides, poor emotion regulation too. So we have a disorder characterized by these things and a treatment that seems to target these things. So this seems like a pretty good thing to look at to help people with ADHD. That's all well and good, but what does the research literature say? So there's a large research literature, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I really just want to emphasize a few basic points. And so these next couple of slides, each row is a different study that's been done looking at mindfulness as a treatment study for adults with ADHD. And so again, there's a lot to digest here. We're not going to go study by study. Instead, what I really want to focus on is what these studies say about emotional functioning that might help give us some direction about how to cope with pandemic stress. So first of all, does mindfulness seem to help with stress and depression and anxiety? And And so we see here, this table looks at 3 different studies, and this just looked at a group of adults with ADHD, and they did a pre and post comparison. So they looked at their symptoms before treatment and then after treatment. And in the box here, in the red boxes, I have more of the emotional functioning outcomes. And you can see here that in these studies, you saw depression and anxiety improve. You saw self-compassion improve, and then also mindfulness. And I included this trait-based mindfulness measure because that's associated with improved emotional functioning. So we see in these different studies, they're looking at different things, but when you look across them, you do see improvements in emotional functioning. This table similarly looks at mindfulness studies that have been done for adults with ADHD when you compared them to a no treatment comparison group. I think the main headline here is that when you look in these boxes, you see improvements in emotional functioning. So across these studies that were done, we see improvements in emotion dysregulation, depression, anxiety, positive and negative mood, trait-based mindfulness. And then finally, when we look at mindfulness in comparison to an active treatment comparison. So as these 3 slides have progressed, the treatment studies have gotten more and more scientifically rigorous to test if mindfulness works. And you can see out of these 3 studies, 2 reported outcomes indicating that emotional functioning improved for the adults with ADHD who received a mindfulness intervention. All right. So since we see that mindfulness helps with aspects of emotional functioning, and if you're an adult with ADHD or someone you care about you might be asking, okay, so what are mindfulness strategies that can be used to manage pandemic-related stress? So before we really dive into that, just a couple of caveats. So we're going to talk about some mindfulness practices. And that's really what I hope people get out of this, is that there are strategies that you can use. And we'll go over a couple of them. But yeah, a few caveats. First of all, this is a practice that you learn and cultivate over time. So it takes time and it takes effort. And you're not expected to do it right every time. In fact, the process of learning requires that you don't do it right every time. And that's learning. So, but it takes time, it takes effort, and then also guidance is needed. So, we typically, guidance, whether or not you have a therapist or some meditation expert who is leading you through it. You can do self-guided study, but if you are, I suggest resources that we'll talk about towards the end of this talk. And then also, it's not a cure-all. This is something that takes time and effort to learn. You do want guidance, just as when you're learning any kind of new skill. You're going to want somebody helping provide a path forward and help troubleshoot. So whether or not you're doing it with people who have practiced mindfulness meditation before, or you're doing a self-guided study. And if you're doing a self-guided study and trying it on your own, you can still have a guide. And I have got a resource towards the end of this talk to go over that. And then also, mindfulness is not a cure-all. So it does help, and it's something to be excited about, but it doesn't help with everything. And then also, mindfulness can be learned through formal meditation practices. So getting into formal meditation practices is important. And so it's an important thing to aim for. And then also, I have here practice before game day. And so this is analogous to, if you're a team, you don't just go straight into the playoff season, but you need to practice. You need to have, your spring training. Then you need to have your exhibition games, and then you go into the playoffs. And so much like that, with mindfulness, we want to practice it, and we want to practice it when things are not at their most intense. But we kind of want to find times each day where we can do it, where we kind of feel centered and calm, with the idea that if we can do it in that way, that we will be ready for those situations that are more stressful and more demanding of us. And then also another caveat is that we typically start with a mindfulness of breath exercise. And so what that might bring up the question for you. Okay, what's a mindfulness of breath exercise? And so there's a lot of us here. And so now a large group, we can try our best and maybe do a little bit of an exercise. And I just want to introduce, there's some general things that we do. We're not going to do a long one, but just introduce some general ideas. And so typically when we do this in a group therapy format, which is what we do in our clinic, is we first of all talk about like what is the posture to assume. So as we do this exercise, what you're going to want to do is a couple of things. First of all, think about your body. Feet on the floor, back against the chair, in an upright, attentive yet relaxed kind of posture. Maybe allowing your eyes to close, putting your arms in a comfortable position. You can have your hands together, apart, palms up, palms down. Any way is fine, as long as it's comfortable. And then allowing your eyes to close. And what we do with the mindfulness of breath exercise is we make the one thing that we want to unitask on is focusing on the sensation of our breathing. And so seeing if you can follow each inhale and each exhale for their full duration. And then focusing on the next inhale and the next exhale. And you're taking this as an opportunity to check in with yourself, asking, where is my breath right now? So we're not trying to change your breathing. There's no agenda to do anything but be aware of the unfolding of one breath to the next. And I'll give you a moment of silence just to see if you can follow each inhale and each exhale. And as you do that, it may be helpful to find a physical anchor. That's what we call it. So focusing on the sensation of air passing in and out of your nostrils, movement of the chest, movement of the belly, and using those anchors to help stay with the breath. And then ask yourself, where is my focus right now? And if your attention strayed to something else, then see if you can acknowledge that, let go of any judgment for your mind wandering, and then kindly invite yourself back, letting go of judgment and coming at this with an attitude of openness and acceptance and curiosity. And if you have to remind yourself 100 times to come back to the breath, and that's 100 moments of letting go of judgment and being mindful and reorienting yourself to the breath and being present with that. Okay, and go ahead and open up your eyes. Now that was a very quick exercise. What we typically do in the mindfulness program that this is based off of, which is treatment that has been tested in adults with ADHD and has been modified for adults with ADHD, we might do about a 5-minute exercise. And that's typically where we start off. But even doing just 2 or 3 minutes like what we just did, that's certainly acceptable too. So that's a mindfulness of breath exercise. And so thinking about like, what are things that I can do? That's one thing that you can do. And we'll talk about resources to have guidance for that if you want to carry something like that forward. Another exercise that we typically do in mindfulness interventions for adult ADHD is what we do. We do what's called the RAIN exercise. And the RAIN exercise, it's an acronym to take you through a series of different steps. And the whole purpose of these exercises is to process and cope with and effectively manage, deal with negative mood states. And so the way that this might work is you might start off by thinking about a stressful situation, so something that has gotten to you recently. Or if you're feeling a strong negative emotion right now, then that's something that you can do in the moment with this exercise. And so with the RAIN exercise, we go through each step that you can see right here. So first of all, we recognize. And so by recognizing, what that's referring to is recognizing the emotion. So asking yourself, what emotions are present right now, or when I felt this negative mood state. And so these might be one word kind of answers: anxious, sad, overwhelmed, distressed, frustrated, angry. And so and there's something to naming the emotions sometimes, because we all feel them, and that's not new, but stopping and acknowledging that it's there can be a very therapeutic thing, believe it or not. And then we practice the second step, accept. So this is asking yourself, can I accept that this emotion is here? I may not want the emotion. I may not deserve it. Maybe it shouldn't be here. But regardless, it's here. So can I accept this thing that I don't want here? Can I accept that it's here? Can I let it be present? And can I let it be a part of my experience, even though I may not want to share it as a part of my experience right now? And then once you work through the accept piece, then we go to investigate. So this is getting closer to that thing that we may not want to experience. So we investigate, okay, I've named the emotion. How does that emotion feel in my body? Can I investigate that? So when I say I feel stressed, am I carrying that in my upper back? Does it feel sore? Is it my jaw? Is it somewhere else in my body? And being curious about that experience. What's there when I feel this emotion? What's there in my body? And then also let's investigate further. What's there in my thoughts? What are the thoughts that coincide with this current emotional state? And then also noticing your behavior. What do I do when I feel this way? Am I more reclusive? Am I less likely to engage with others? Am I less likely to make eye contact? And what we're doing is we're investigating. We're simply seeing what's there. We're not trying to do anything about it right now. We're just noticing what's there. So we don't want to put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do anything out of the ordinary other than just investigate and identify what's there. And then once we do that, then we move on to the fourth step, non-identify with difficult emotions. So typically when we go through the R, the A, and the I, this naturally happens, where you start to see this emotion that you had, the thing that's been weighing you down, is that this is something that's temporary. This is something that doesn't define who I am or who I'll be. this is something that will go away. And you also may find that when you go through this exercise that you may have to go through the steps. You might go through R and then A and then I. And then when you're going through I, you might notice another emotion. And then you'll go through R, A, and I again. And so it might not go in the R, A, I, N direction like we might expect it to. Sometimes it may, but then sometimes it might not. And so we want to be open to that experience. So that's the RAIN exercise. And then also we want the RAIN exercise is for coping with negative emotions. But we also may want to think about, well, do we want to try to just deal with negative emotions, or is there any way that we can cultivate positive emotions as well? So can I not just try to make myself feel less of a negative mood, but can I feel more of a positive mood? And so there are mindfulness practices like loving kindness, where we actually practice genuinely trying to build up positive emotions. So it's not trying to fake it or anything like that, but instead what we're trying to do is to see if we can, and using this quote is a nice way to demonstrate it, can we water the seeds? Are we going to water the seeds of anger, criticism, blame, or distraction? Or with loving kindness and other ways to cultivate positive emotions, do we water the seeds of tolerance, love, and compassion? So one thing that we might do, so in one of the treatments of using mindfulness for adult ADHD, we typically end each group session with a brief appreciation exercise. And so typically what we'll do is we'll ask group members to close their eyes. And if you'd like to, you can do this too. We'll just do a short one. You close your eyes and then you take a moment to see if you can, in a genuine, sincere way, appreciate other people's presence today. And so for this, let's appreciate other people's presence for being on this webinar. We're all here for reasons maybe to improve our own lives, the lives of people that we work with, the lives of family members or friends or spouses. And seeing if you have a sense of gratitude in there for the presence of others today. And even in your mind, wishing those people well. So maybe even saying in your mind, may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. And then seeing if you can turn that onto yourself. So just as you can wish others goodwill, can you wish yourself goodwill? May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. And then repeating that again to yourself. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. And then checking in with yourself. Do you feel any more gratitude or appreciation? And if you don't, that's okay. We're not trying to force it. We're just trying to observe what's there. And then seeing if you can take this appreciative attitude that you wish to others and to yourself and carry this on for the rest of the day. Okay, so that's a short example of how we might do it in group. And then also, I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but what are creative ways to practice mindfulness? And there's a lot of different ways. And think of it as like dipping your toe into the present moment. Mindfulness, as you've probably learned from past webinars on this topic, it's about being present. And so there's a lot of different ways to dip your toe into the present moment. So this is the telephone breath. So taking a mindful breath every single time that the telephone rings or buzzes. And just being present with your breath just for one inhale and one exhale. And then you pick up your phone and check that message. Also, there's a red light breath, which is kind of the same idea. When you come up to a red light, and after you've come to a complete stop and it's safe to close your eyes, maybe taking a mindful breath or keeping your eyes open and taking a mindful breath. There's other ways too, like the stop exercise. So this is basically a series of steps, much like the rain exercise, where you stop, take a mindful breath, and just observe what's going on right now. Where's my attention right now? What do I notice? What are the sounds in my environment? Where is my breath? What do I notice about my body? What thoughts and emotions or actions am I noticing right now? And then it's an opportunity using stop as a way to stop and kind of take stock of where things are at right now. And then asking yourself, do I want to keep on going as I've just been going from what I've just noticed, or do I want to change direction? And then also there's informal practices like just observing. So when a negative event happens, write down, what are the events? How does it feel? How does it feel in my body? What are the body sensations? What are the feelings that I notice? What are the thoughts that I notice, and what are the actions? And you may find that there's a trend there. And when there's a trend and you're tracking these kinds of things, then you can use that you could use that data to decide, how do I want to approach these situations differently? If you notice that a particular person or time of day, there's a trigger, you might notice trends in that. And there might be things that you can do to help cope with those stressful situations. Okay, and I know we're running out of time, so we're not going to go through everything, but that's okay. We didn't intend to. Instead, the goal is to get some of these resources to you. So there are books that are available. So the yellow book here, this is the Mindfulness Prescription for Adult ADHD. This was written by Lydia Zylowska, and that's a great resource to check out. Also, Lydia Zylowska and I, we just published just last month a new book, Mindfulness for Adult ADHD, a clinician's guide. And then also you can see on the right side here, these are some websites that have some guided narrations to walk you through some of the mindfulness of breath, rain exercises that we just went over. And also, an app a day keeps the mindlessness away. So there's a lot of great apps that are out there that I would recommend experimenting with and trying, with the goal to consider your goal for mindfulness, formal meditation practices, maybe to start low and then gradually build your way up. And so maybe starting off at a couple of minutes each day and seeing if you can get farther and farther as time progresses. And these might be good aids to help in that process, in addition to what I mentioned here on this slide. Okay, so thank you for everyone's attention. I think that's within the time so that we have some time for questions.
Yes, we do indeed. Thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell. That was incredibly helpful to learn the background and then to actually walk through the paces of some of these exercises. We've got a lot of feedback from people who felt that they were ADHD friendly in a way that perhaps they didn't expect mindfulness to be. So that was very helpful to participate in. I will get right into the questions because we have quite a few. One of the most common questions is, you made the point early on that this is indeed a practice, and that you start small and build, but knowing that ADHD brains struggle to initiate new routines, how do you recommend someone actually make a good start here? Should they pencil in time on their calendar? Should they schedule it as they would an appointment with their boss?
Yeah, exactly. That's a really great question. Some of the common pitfalls is kind of being trying to bite off too much too early. And so what you want to do is you want to think about it as small incremental steps that you're going to build on, and you're not going to be starting at where you want to finish at. And using things that we might do in cognitive behavioral therapy, like using a daily planner or something like that. And yes, absolutely, schedule it in just like any other important thing in your life. Or if you're not scheduling, then this is a great time to start scheduling. And then if the question is, well, how do I use a schedule or something like that? Then we might say, well, pair it up with something that you do every day. I have my coffee every single day. So pair it up with your morning coffee. And so kind of maybe even make the coffee the reward or whatever your drink or food or whatever other activity is something that you do regularly and it's an enjoyable thing. You can pair it up and you can also use that as a reward for actually doing it. So, and if you're using it as a reward, then making sure to do the meditation first and then reward yourself. So, you eat your broccoli, then get the ice cream. You don't eat the ice cream and then expect yourself to eat the broccoli. So you want to do something like that, and also take it easy on yourself. It's a process of learning, and so there's ups and downs along the way. So if you have one day where you don't get to it, then let's let go of judgment for it. It's not good or bad that you didn't. The fact is you didn't, and tomorrow's a new day.
Yes, that is important to keep in mind. Some people here are asking if there's any research or even anecdotal evidence about how to time perhaps exercise in the morning. Are you more likely to be able to attend to mindfulness after you have exercised, or is it better to come at it with a fresh mind before you begin the rest of your? I guess it's whether you think of exercise as a reward, right?
Yeah. Like if you really enjoy exercising and this is a habit that you have and you're gonna do it, then maybe use that as the reward, the consequence for meditating. And so in that case, then you might want to do the meditation first, because if you're like clockwork with the exercise, then that'll help out with the mindfulness practice. But then if you're just starting to exercise and you haven't established a new routine, then we might want to think about it differently. Behavior change, and in this case, meditating and exercising more. Again, we want to think about, what are the strategies that we can use?
On the flip side of that question, we had a number of people asking about kind of in the heat of the moment mindfulness. Someone specifically said they recently actually lost their job because they got a little heated in a customer exchange. And can you use mindfulness for those kind of explosive moments?
Absolutely. And that's where the practice pays off. But it does hinge on the practice. And so that's why it's important to, take this seriously and to practice ahead of time, trusting that these kinds of situations are going to pop up. And so that you've got that built up in your reserve. And that's something that you can rely on in the moment. And if you're having to the more automatic this process can be, the more practice you have and the more it is part of your normal routine, the better. But,
wonderful.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, to who that happened to.
Yes. A number of people are saying they're wondering if it's helpful in those moments of emotional dysregulation, which you talked about at the outset, that the stress of the pandemic is just aggravating sort of an already prevalent ADHD trait, which is emotional dysregulation. A lot of parents are seeing this at home as we enter, month 10 of remote learning and all the frustrations that go with that. And that kind of leads into another question. This presentation was focused more on adults, but we do have a number of people asking about teenagers and young adults. And whether mindfulness can help with them? And specifically, if you have any recommendations for resources for people who might assume mindfulness is boring.
Oh, right. Yeah. And for those who might assume that mindfulness is boring, that certainly won't be restricted to any age range. But there's a lot of good resources out there. I could share them. I don't have them readily available, but in my clinical practice, we share them with parents regularly. Actually, something that off the top of my head, Guilford.com, so Guilford Press, Guilford.com, they have a really great section for families and coping with pandemic-related distress. And for those that are interested, what I would say is that, there's a lot of different ways to practice coping with stress. And that may mean that if they're not into mindfulness or they just have a negative taste in their mouth for it for whatever reason, then that might be an indication to try something else and maybe first go to exercise or relaxation strategies or something else that helps with stress and coming back to mindfulness maybe when they're more prepared.
Right. A number of people are asking about yoga and whether practicing yoga could achieve some of the same benefits that you've talked about with mindfulness in general, and maybe just how kind of the rain exercises, which are not typically thought don't typically take place in a yoga setting, whether really you need to be practicing that recognition and acceptance in order for it to be beneficial.
Yeah. Some mindfulness treatments, so mindfulness-based stress reduction. So this is kind of the mindfulness practice that first really brought mindfulness to Western psychology. That was developed in the late 1970s by Jon Kabat-Zinn. That actually includes some yoga practice. And so these are certainly things that they can go hand in hand. And if somebody is already a yoga practitioner, then I would encourage you to be curious and learn about mindfulness meditation practices and see be curious. Where are areas where you're kind of doing it already in your practice? Where are areas where you're not doing it, but you could easily incorporate it into your practice? Or where are areas that you could incorporate it where you might want to, modify what you're doing with your yoga practice? So there's a lot of different ways to approach it. And I would say, the main thing is to have an open, curious attitude and be willing to modify your practice if this is something that sounds appealing to you.
Gotcha. On a similar vein, a number of questions regarding mindfulness while walking, for example, or moving the body. A lot of people find it easier actually to hone in on focus for mindfulness while their body is moving.
Right. Yeah. So actually in the mindfulness program that we've tested here at Duke, and then also that's been tested elsewhere for adults with ADHD, it includes walking practices just for that reason, because when you do a group, a mindfulness group for adults with ADHD, that commonly comes up is that, a core symptom of ADHD is restlessness, getting up to move, just for the sake of moving. So then we expect that to happen when adults with ADHD practice mindfulness. And so you can approach this in a number of different ways, and there's no right or wrong way to approach it. There's just, there's a lot of these different ways that I would encourage people to try on. Sometimes, if you have an urge to walk, is that an opportunity to sit with that aversive feeling and see if you can be present with that and work through that and stay sitting. Whereas other times, why not get up and do a walking meditation? And there's certainly walking meditation. So in the resources with the books and the websites that I listed on one of my last slides, that includes some walking meditations as well. So walking meditation is certainly okay.
Excellent. That's going to make a lot of people, I think, more open to giving it a try. And some have asked about if you have any advice for encouraging a loved one who could benefit from mindfulness, but had preconceived notions. Anything that you would suggest in suggesting to get someone to take that first step?
Yeah, I think, and this is going away from mindfulness, but more how to deal with that. And I would speak to that person in the language that they hear. So, for example, if this is somebody that if they hear there's research behind this, and it actually does have effects, it has real effects, then you might want to come at it from a scientific perspective. Or if you know someone that's practiced it and they're more, and this is somebody that they listen to and, give the benefit of the doubt, then maybe have that person talk to them. So I guess it depends on what gets through to that individual and then using that avenue as a way to talk about mindfulness. And even when we do groups in the clinic, we don't have people who have buy-in, and that's okay. And I tell them, you don't have to buy into this. Come at it with an open, curious attitude. That's what I ask for. I don't ask for people to come into it being all gung-ho for mindfulness. But instead, wherever you're at is where you're at. And what I ask is to be open and curious.
Excellent. Yes. And it's a good time of year to be discussing this, as everyone, I think, is pursuing new ways to achieve resolutions. I did want to follow up a little bit on RAIN, as we had a question regarding if you could clarify the N in RAIN. A few people wondering, could it be nurture? Maybe just review that quickly for us. But that was very interesting for a lot of people.
Yeah. So for that last step of RAIN, by the way, can y'all hear me all right?
Yes, I can. The video is a little garbled, but we'll power through that.
Okay. Yeah. This is my new look. But okay, y'all can hear me. So that last step in RAIN is to not identify with. And so typically what that means is going through that process, acknowledging that whatever emotion you're feeling, whatever thoughts that you're having, that these are not you, that these are not things to identify with. So as opposed to, I really screwed up and I can't do anything right. It's not identifying with it might be, I'm having a thought that I screwed up. And this is a temporary thought. And the emotion that goes along with it, feeling ashamed and frustrated, that's a temporary emotion. And just as it wasn't present 5 minutes ago, it might not be present 5 minutes from now. And so this is not something that defines me. This is not something that I have to identify with. Instead, using mindfulness as a way to get to more of the truth behind it. These are temporary phenomena, whether they're emotional or cognitive.
I like that message a lot. That's a good one. We have time for just a quick speed round here. 1 minute. A really interesting question that I think came from another professional, and that was, what research is most exciting you right now regarding the power of mindfulness?
Oh, well, there's a lot of good research on mindfulness for adult ADHD, but there's a group at Radboud University in Europe that is actually doing some research for children with ADHD, and they've got a couple of studies coming out now. And so that's what really excites me. That's one thing. I know it's a lightning round, so I'll be really, really quick. There's a second thing, also looking at why does mindfulness work for adults with ADHD or for ADHD in general. So there's some really cool avenues avenues to pursue, whether it's looking at the default mode network of the brain, and then mind wandering and a whole host of other things.
That was very impressive. Thank you. So we are out of time. This was incredibly helpful. Tons of positive comments and resources that people are sharing with each other, which I think we will try to collect on our end and share, because a lot of people have recommended specific apps that have worked for them, and that's always helpful to read. So Dr. Mitchell, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to everyone who joined us listening. Everyone be well, be safe, and thank you again for this wonderful presentation today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you all for joining.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.